important, and then actually how it all works. And we've left plenty of time for questions. So in the meantime, if you have a question, you're going to be on mute during part of the discussion. Just type in the question bar, and we'll get to it as soon as possible. All right? Thanks again. Ken, go ahead.
Thanks, Jennifer. Well, hi, everyone. First of all, I'd like to welcome you to this hopefully relatively short presentation of the ASCLD Lab Accreditation Automation Project, as we call it, in the scope of what we're trying to do with ASCLD Lab. As Jennifer mentioned, I'm sort of working with ASCLD Lab on this project. So my role at Qualtrax is the product manager. I'm sort of aligned with the development team to really figure out what we need to be building next for our customers, and specifically for this project, how we go forward and roll this out in the best way possible for you all as ASCLD Lab's customers, as well as them as a business. So again, welcome to this. I think I'm going to probably speak for about 30 minutes is what I timed myself to, so I'll try and hold it to that. And then, as Jennifer said, we'll open it up for questions at the end. So I actually have everyone muted at this point. Now we'll do that throughout the presentation. But again, if you do have questions or something strikes you as I'm presenting the material here, go ahead and write it down or either type it right into the chat, and I will start with those at the end and unmute it then for everyone to kind of open general questions up. So to begin, I'd first like to say, you know, as a representative of Qualtrax here, and as my company, you know, being chosen as a vendor to provide the solution, this webinar is not a demo of the Qualtrax product. I'm not here necessarily to sell you Qualtrax. I'm here to explain what we're trying to do for ASCLD Lab through technology that is centered around Qualtrax, but it's not specifically about Qualtrax. So I wanted to get that out there. So what are we doing for ASCLD Lab? The scope of this project is to take the full accreditation process and all the surveillance audits that occur annually thereafter, and really roll what right now is very email, paper-based, and sort of, I guess, a dated way of going through an accreditation process, and really merge it into an online portal. So we're bringing technology, in other words, to the process of an accreditation. So every step of the way, from the initial sign-up, through the conformance file submission, through the gap analysis thereafter, all the way through to when you get your final accreditation judgment, basically, you will have an online interface to work with the ASCLD Lab assessment team and everyone else in that organization. So we're really bringing a website to the accreditation process and giving inputs for each one of the stakeholders here, from the ASCLD Lab side to the laboratory side, for the assessment process. And this goes for labs who have no solution for quality management, you know, it's paper-based or Excel or wherever you may be coming from, to ones who have a system, to ones who have Qualtrax. We're making this completely open to everyone because, of course, those are the customers of ASCLD Lab. And I'll talk through all of this in more detail throughout the presentation, but I'd like to kind of hit a few of those highlights early because I think they're really important to understand. So why is ASCLD Lab moving in this direction? If you've been through an assessment before or you're preparing for one now, you may understand that there's many steps involved in an assessment. Many of them require a lot of documentation, a lot of record keeping, and a lot of back and forth with the assessment team and yourselves. So we're trying to make that much more efficient, and hopefully as efficient as possible, and again, using technology to connect folks better, more immediately, send automatic email notifications and alerts, and provide you with real clear to-dos at each given step. So things that right now are a little, you know, maybe you're waiting to mail something to someone or receive something, we're really trying to eliminate those time sinks and make the accreditation process in the end much faster, hopefully, than it is today. So again, I'm going to kind of talk through all the aspects of that process and what we're shaping up to look like under this solution this year as I go through this presentation. But the other benefit, as I see it so far, is that we're hopefully going to drive some more consistency from assessment to assessment. And that's from one lab to another, but that's also annually within your own lab. So again, if we give a common place for all the team members to interface with and some common inputs at each place, you're going to get a lot more consistent output of each of those. And so that's another goal for the project here, and I think that's a very clear win for both sides through what we're going to be doing. So let me jump right in here. So how do you begin to take part in this solution, and what does it look and feel like? And I'm going to kind of show you some screenshots and some mock-ups that we've been working with the ASCLD Lab team on and that we're ultimately developing to make this part of what you can experience by the end of 2014. So everything is going to initially be triggered off of the ASCLDlab.org website, and so this is a picture of it right now. You may be familiar with that. There's going to be an initial sign-up page that we'll create, and so this is for users who are really trying to enter this accreditation process for the first time. Of course, some of you have been through this multiple times. You may even be in a surveillance period right now. There will be a stage for you to begin using this portal no matter where you are. You don't have to enter it at the full accreditation point. But there will, in other words, be a very clear, straightforward sign-up page just to start it once. And then from that point forward, you'll be into the portal and you can leverage that and go forward every year after that. And so I'll get to what that looks like as well. So you're a lab director. You want to start using this new tool to facilitate the assessment. Again, you start from the ASCLDlab.org website. From that point forward, Qualtrax kicks in, and everything about the assessment will be used from a Qualtrax system, which ASCLD has in place today. So why we are excited about this project and why we feel like we would be able to do a great job for ASCLD as a vendor here is that our core product today does much of what they're asking for here. So we will be leveraging our workflow or process automation engine, a key module of the Qualtrax product, to facilitate the assessment process. Believe it or not, there are over 100 steps in an assessment that have to happen every time. So we will be using a workflow, more or less a decision tree flow chart in our product to work the process through its necessary steps and let each individual player know what they have to do at every given step. We'll also be leveraging the document management module. So both of these will be heavily used in this process, and you'll see what that looks like as I go through some of these slides. But that's functionality that's in our product today that we can have out of the box to start with this, with some additional development to make some of this a little more seamless and look and feel like what an assessment optimally would feel like. So the beauty of this is that whether you're on the lab side, lab director, or anyone else, quality manager on the team for the assessment, or you're on the ASCLD lab end, on their full-time staff, or on the assessment team, including the lead assessor, everyone interfaces with the same product through a secure online website. That's all you need. You just need a browser and an internet connection. You'll get credentials to log in once you sign up for this. Use those going forward. You'll have credentials for anyone else in your business who may need to log in as well. That'll be part of this. But again, there's one common interface here, which is something that's not present today. So what does it look like once you're in? Part of the new development that we'll be working with over the next few months is to build really simple, streamlined, intuitive dashboards for all parties to interface with. So what you're seeing here is a mock-up of what it could look like, and we're hoping will look like from the lab's perspective, very clearly outlining the steps that they would ever interface with, and in this case during a full assessment, showing you where you are in the process. That's very important, so you know where you've been, where you're going to go next, and then giving very clear inputs in terms of how to interact at that step. So you may need to, submit records for a conformance file. You may need to upload your statement of qualifications, whatever it may be. You'll have very clear prompts to do that and very big, hopefully, intuitive buttons that will show any level of sort of technology savviness, how to interface with it. So again, behind the scenes, it's our Qualtrax workflow engine that's predominantly guiding this through each step. Really, that's another way of saying we're taking away the paperwork that exists today, and in a lot of cases, some of the electronic forms you're filling out for preparation for an assessment, and we're replacing them with an electronic form that's on the website. So every step of the process, ASCLD Lab will be building an electronic form with fields that will ask for uploading of records, text boxes to input data, drop-down menus to select different disciplines, whatever may be the case. But we're going to tailor what right now takes place very heavily through paperwork and otherwise through Word documents, and try and merge as much of that into the website as possible and consolidate where possible how many of those times you got to fill it out. So what you're seeing here is an example of what the step that may ask for your professional staff statement of qualifications. So again, you sort of enter each one of the lab personnel that you want to input for this compliant, for this step of the assessment. In some cases, you may still want to fill out the electronic Word document. So we're not going to remove that that requirement or even that option if that's beneficial to you as the lab. We understand that you all even have needs for statement of qualifications beyond the assessment. So we're going to give you an input for that, let you fill it out in the Word form if that's how you still prefer to do it, and move forward from there. Those records are still referenceable and usable after the assessment if need be. So again, why else are we doing this? You know, we're not really trying to just take the Word document that you've already been filling out and just put it somewhere else necessarily. There's a tremendous gain here because we're using technology to facilitate the assessment. So what you're seeing here is a good example of it. So the conformance file that you have to fill out for every assessment. Right now, again, you use the Word template that ASCLD Lab provides and hyperlink to the records that are referenced in each one of those elements of the standards that you're seeking compliance against. Right now, of course, you fill that out, and then you put your associated records on CDs, put them on thumb drives perhaps, but otherwise you mail that information to the assessment team. It's a very slow, tedious process, I think, relative to what it could be. We're hopefully replacing all of that with a much more efficient mechanism. So the same demand is there. You still have to fill out a conformance file throughout your full assessment, but we're providing an interface to do that more effectively. So what you're seeing here now is a mock-up of the document control side of Qualtrax that will be used to really mirror what the conformance file will need. And I'm focusing on conformance files because I think everyone understands and agrees that that is one of the more intensive parts of preparing for an accreditation and really getting all the legwork done so that when the assessors show up on site, you're ready to rock and roll. And that's where a lot of our new development is going to be centered to make that as seamless and efficient as possible. So again, on the left, you're seeing our document control module. By signing up for this accreditation process and really beginning a new full assessment, Qualtrax is going to automatically build a folder in ASCLD Lab's site for the lab, for your lab, and within that, it will build out subfolders for every one of the standards in the frameworks that you're seeking compliance with. So based on how your accreditation application is submitted, you may be seeking 17025 accreditation for a testing lab. You may be submitting it for a testing and a calibration lab. It may include FBI QAS standards in both cases. All the standards for every one of those options are going to be displayed here as folders, and then subfolders within each of those for management system requirements and compliance records. And again, if you're familiar with the conformance file, this mirrors that identically. So there's a placeholder, in other words, for everything the conformance file is already asking you to submit in the old days on CDs and thumb drives and whatever else that may have been on. So we're having placeholders for all of those records, all those files that you would be submitting. And as you can see, there's some very intuitive inputs at each of those places to drag and drop the records that you want to show compliance with each one of those elements of the standards. One of the more exciting things we'll be building here as well is the ability to hyperlink specifically to sections or bookmarks within a given file. So your quality manual is probably referenced in a majority of these standards. We don't want to ask you to upload that 100 times. So you're going to upload that once and simply point out for each one of the different locations which bookmark we need to be building a hyperlink for. So that's the other exciting thing here. If I move on, as you upload those records, we're also going to have a template for the conformance file automatically created for you. Within that template, as you upload those records, we're going to automatically insert hyperlinks in the relative section because we know where you're putting them by selecting a given folder for that standard. We know where the hyperlinks need to go and what those files are. And again, if you've told us a bookmark or a section, that's the link we'll insert there. So this really closes a tremendous overhead gap, for whoever's preparing for the accreditation, and then really the assessors to use. So in some cases, you may have messed up a hyperlink, causing some frustration from the assessment team, or just a broken link. Those go away now, especially concerns about where the files are located. If there's file management issues where they're not on the CD they should be on, the link may not know where to go. All that goes away because it's all in a common repository now, and it's all automated. Now, as with every part of the Qualtrax document tree or the document functionality, you as somebody on the lab side who's building this conformance file through uploading of records can check out the conformance file as well make notes, make amendments. You can edit it, in other words, however you see fit, so that when you're ready, after submitting all your records, and this again is something you can go back to, so you don't have to do it all in one shot or one day. You can groom this conformance file over a period of weeks or months or whatever suits your needs. Whenever you're ready, though, and you've got it in a finalized state, you hit submit and push the process on. And again, I'm going to come back to the screen of the dashboard. You'll have a very clear button telling you, I'm ready to submit this. Once you do so, it'll move it forward in terms of where you are in the process and show you where that step is. That will then trigger, just like every step will, automatic alerts to the assessment team. They'll be notified that you've submitted the conformance file and they're ready to proceed with their gap analysis. And again, I want to remind you, this workflow module will move the process through every step from gap, through the on-site steps, and there's some inputs and outputs of each one of these, all the way through to that final accreditation decision. So it gets even better. This is not just a one-time shot and then you got to repeat it all again. The full accreditation year, you use the portal here. It then automatically ties that to the surveillance visit and all the steps that are relative to that. It's a smaller condensed set of steps for workflow there, but it connects it. And so hopefully we'll be able to leverage some of the data you've input here if some of it's going to be repeated there, like around the lab, information, the address, all the other things that may have been submitted through the sign-up process. We'll try and leverage that and make that part of what's available. There's surveillance visits, but we are absolutely going to tie one to the other. So you're notified when it's time to begin the next annual cycle. And then all the way back through to the next full accreditation. Really for the lifetime of your relationship with ASCLD Lab, you'll be connected here and it'll all be automated. So some other benefits here, because we're using a Qualtrax system just like every other aspect, you as an end user and someone involved in the lab side will have a reference and a historical document now to what happened for every accreditation that you've been a part of for this during this portal's life. So you can go back a year, you can go back 2 years and see, what at each step of the way, who did what, any of the files that we're retaining, you can go open those up. So again, just a searchable, reportable history of the accreditation itself is now available if that's valuable. So again, every one of the workflows has been filled out. You can see the inputs and outputs at any given step if that's necessary. So I would be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about what advantage this would have to folks who have Qualtrax as a quality management solution. Again, I want to stress we're building this to be open and intuitive and hopefully welcoming to any lab, regardless of what you do on the quality management side. But we are absolutely building in some advantages if you're a Qualtrax customer. So there's some bonuses here if you use Qualtrax already or you're considering it in terms of how easy this is to use. The heart of what I've just showed you doesn't change whatsoever. However, as having a Qualtrax system, you're using the same modules. You're basically doing a lot of this work already in your own Qualtrax system. So I'd like to take a second and kind of talk about what that looks like. What you're seeing here is a shot of a document that's being maintained in Qualtrax, and this is just a lab equipment data sheet, but it's been associated with some standards. And so this is the heart of how Qualtrax works. For every document, whether it's a policy, procedure, form, record of some kind, you can associate that particular item against one of the ISO or QAS standards. We don't really care which framework you're putting in here. And in this case, you can see I have 2005, 17025, and then some QAS frameworks that are available in each one of the elements. So you align your documentation, in other words, against the standards. And when you do that, you can then get a gap analysis kind of report to see your coverage, how your quality management system and the document control of that is shaping up, and then hopefully address any gaps you may have, but really do internal audit preparation, and especially when outside assessors are on site, use the tool to facilitate that view. But again, if you have a Qualtrax system, you're basically grooming your document management system in this fashion throughout the year. You're doing all that work already. So in doing so, you're using some set of standards. And one of the really cool things that we're working with ASCLD Lab on right now is to get them to help us create a standard framework that aligns with the portal. So like you saw a second ago, the folder layout is identical to the standards, and 17025 or FBI QAS or whatever it may be, you have basically a placeholder for each one of those standards. We also are able to advocate for our customers to input the exact same framework into their system so that when they're ready to use the portal, they've already aligned all their documents to the exact same set of standards and the exact same format that ASCLD Lab will ask of them when they use the portal. If you've already not got that set of standards, we're going to be building a standard mapping tool, and this is really exciting regardless of whether you use this portal or not annually. But what it'll basically do is allow you to take a new framework like the one that we're working with ASCLD Lab to finalize here so we can provide to our customers, but then insert it into your Qualtrax system in a couple clicks. And if you've already got an older framework in place and you've got your document control system aligned with it, you can just tell it where some changes may exist from one version to another, particularly if 17025 comes out with a new standard in a couple of years. You want to import that in your system, and it's probably 95% of the cases the same, in terms of how each element aligns. You can very quickly tell it where any differences need to be aligned, and then it'll go automatically insert the new hyperlinks in that document to the new set of standards against the older one. And I'm sure there may be some questions at the end on this a little more, but this is exciting for us. This is what we're going to be doing for our customers. Again, it's really to equip them and prepare them to the same exact layout of the standards that will be in the portal. And even more so exciting, we're going to be providing, in essence, an easy button. So again, once you've already got all of your documentation and your Qualtrax system aligned to those standards, you're pretty much already aligned to the conformance file needs at that point. So what we're going to do is provide an easy button that will auto-import that information into the portal, upload all those records, and in doing so, into each one of those little folders in the portal, it's going to automatically update the conformance file. Again, just like it will do for any lab, regardless of whether they use Qualtrax. We're just going to automate that so you don't have to go folder by folder and give it those records that you otherwise might have to. So again, our focus here is to minimize the overhead required in an assessment. It's to cut down the steps just to transfer records from where you have them on site to the assessment team to use before they get to where they're, so that they can run through the gap analysis efficiently, and you're not having to build CDs and burn them and distribute them times 20 or how many ever assessors are showing up. So again, our goal is to use an online portal, a website, to connect the assessors and everyone at ASCLD Lab to you on the lab end throughout every step of the assessment, but from year to year, and hopefully make this a lot more simpler and clearer, and really drive down costs of an assessment from both sides. So at this point, I'm going to open it up to questions, and let me see if anyone's asked any questions on the chat. I don't see any. And believe it or not, I expected that. So I have a few that I've heard throughout my course of this, and what I'll do real quick is also take everyone off of mute. Let me see here. Take everyone off mute, so you can stop me if you do have some questions. Let's see. I think I see one. Okay, so will a workflow be created for annual reports to ASCLD Lab? Yes, that is actually part of the scope of this project. I've not got a slide here specifically for it, but that's part of what we'll be trying to do for ASCLD Lab here is to automate, similarly through a workflow, how the inputs are required there, the notifications every year to the labs that when the due dates are for those types of items, and it'll all be triggered based on the accreditation itself. So absolutely, very good question. And let me make sure I unmute everyone here. And if you, just based on my experience with these kind of webinars, if you're not going to ask any questions, please put yourselves on mute. It would do everyone a favor. Okay. So until anyone else has any questions, let me run through a few other questions I've received so far in terms of working with folks on this end. So when is this going to be available? It all sounds great. When are we going to get it, or when can we see your words turn into actions here? Our roadmap for development that really facilitates all of what I've shown you aligns with early fall or late fall of this year. So we're absolutely projecting that within 2014 you will have this available. So with that said, we're not just going into a black box and maybe having one webinar like this. We're doing many different customer interactions here to try and ensure that the first time we get this right, but we understand that there's always going to be a lot of feedback and there's going to be a continuous improvement aspect to this. So myself, I actually just returned from 2 different full assessments, 2 weeks of full assessments, from everything from a multi-system, multi-lab full system to a single lab, smaller site, to observe full assessment and really take that feedback back to ASCLD Lab and bring it back to the project here. We're also going to be doing many of these webinars, so this is the first of them. We're going to have multiple ones as we iteratively release some of the functionality here, and we can show more of how this will look and feel. But we've also built into our timeline a beta phase. So once we get enough of this functionality up and running and it looks similar to how it's projected to look, we will start walking labs through the steps. And that includes the assessment team on ASCLD Lab as well, because they're going to have a lot of feedback here as well. And really let people tell us what we got right, what we need to go back and revisit, what we can improve, or what we just need to think about for the next, phase 2 of this whole thing. We're also going to open it up to a pilot or 2. So there's going to be some labs that will be chosen to start their next full accreditation or surveillance assessment in this portal before we open it up to everyone else to work out some kinks. Right now, all that's still projecting for 2014. So our goal is to have all of this done and ready and out by the end of the year. So I know that might be a common question here, and let me make sure I didn't get any more. Okay. So another common question that we've gotten, especially from the Qualtrax labs that we work with, is, well, understanding that this is coming in 2014, should I just put off everything I want to do between now and then? Our advice, and this has been confirmed and really echoed by ASCLD Lab, is not to change anything today that you are already required to do either by June or by August or by the end of the year. Really operate as on schedule with how you would otherwise do things. But as we get closer to that date, at least for the Qualtrax customers, we're going to be making much more frequent releases of our product to get any relative value or new feature to this project out of the door. Let that be part of the experience. Internalize that feedback and then adjust from there, but also give you more to work with as you want to move through your preparation for an accreditation. Well, are there any other questions? I see one more. Let's see here.
Ken, I'll go ahead and add, if you guys have, oh, you have one more? All right, while you're looking for that. I'll go ahead and tell you guys, if you have coworkers that were not able to attend today, we will be sending out a link to this webinar so that they can re-listen to it. We'll also post it on our website.
Okay. And I have to say, I see that there's a question from Kristen, and I'm sorry, it's not letting me see what your question actually is here. I think it may be kind of putting it behind my presentation. So if you wouldn't mind, Kristen, if you can type it in the chat or even just say it out loud if you don't mind, I could probably answer that, or otherwise I could answer it offline. And while she's doing that, let me go ahead and just make available my email address. Again, I'm sort of the project lead on the Qualtrax end here, and I'm very, very interested in any feedback you have, pro, con, concerns. I'm talking to ASCLD Lab frequently, and they have a very open ear to any type of feedback on this project.
All right, Ken, I can read her question. Question was, our accreditation is scheduled for early 2015. Should we wait to use this new system or assume that for this round we should stick with the old system?
I think, again, our advice for now is to not change how you plan to do the accreditation or even prepare until those things become available. And I think if you have a question, particularly if it's sliding into 2015, it may be best to probably ask the lead assessor you may be working with, or even call ASCLD Lab directly, and I'd be happy to be part of that call, and we can talk about what really makes sense on that end, because I can understand there's some gray area really about what really would make sense for that. But our advice broadly is to not change anything about how you prepare and that's been ASCLD Lab's advice as well. I think that's wise.
Okay, we have another question from Claudine. How long does it take to implement Qualtrax system?
Okay. I think we have two implementation options. So if it's on premise, that's your preference. It's typically a question about how open your IT staff is to setting up the hardware and everything else on that end. But the implementation itself is a matter of, Patrick, how long
do we have to go? This is Patrick. I would do a lot of implementations with Qualtrax, and really what it comes down to is the amount of time that you have to commit to doing it. So the setup of the server and the installation of the hardware, things like that, that only takes 3 to 4 weeks typically if the stars align and your staff and our training schedule and all that lines up. But really where the bulk of that time is spent is after training is completed, when you would start to import your documents and to set up workflows like corrective actions and things like that. Really it's a matter of how much time you can commit to that. So for example, if you are able to commit one full person to that implementation full time, it could be much, much faster. It could be just a few weeks, probably, depending on the size of your system, number of documents, things like that. It could be, 3 to 4 weeks from that. It could be faster if you have more people, and it takes obviously longer if you have less time.
And I will say too, again, the other option we have is for a hosted in the cloud version of Qualtrax, and we've got that down to a day or two once all the paperwork's done to really spin up the system and have that available for usage. But as Patrick's saying, we want to then schedule some implementation time for our trainers to equip you to really run the system. We do the train the trainer approach on that front. Very good question. And I will say on that end too, again, I put my email address here. If you have questions specifically about Qualtrax product or its usage or the sales process there, please reach out to me, and I prefer to address those and maybe do demos outside of the scope of this presentation. Any other questions? Well, if not, I do want to say again, I could not personally just be more excited for what this is going to do, I think, to both businesses, the labs and ASCLD Lab, and we are thrilled as can be to be a vendor in between to facilitate a more efficient, cost-effective accreditation. And really what I saw in the last 2 weeks, really opening the assessors to focus on quality and continuous improvement when they're on site and remove as much of the paperwork and just getting oriented burden that they face today. I think that's one of the biggest things it's going to come down to, is really making quality much more of a focus than the process of an accreditation. So thank you everyone for your time, and again, please feel free to reach out to me for any level of question on this front. More to come. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a great day.